So, guys, I've always wanted to do a video like this, and it's about the wrestler R-Truth. And I want to say if I'm right for not liking him as a wrestler. And one of the reasons why I don't like R-Truth as a wrestler is that he's a definitely big African American stereotype. Like, he's always rapping, he's always dancing, he's always speaking broken English. He has stupid comedy, and then he also comes off as very, very dim-witted and the little Jimmy thing. So definitely, when you look at his gimmick, he comes off as he definitely comes off as definitely a huge a huge racial stereotype. You know, like obviously the dancing and the rapping, black people are rappers and dancers. Definitely when does silly comedy, it comes off in a couple of ways. It comes off as the black guy needs to be the comedian, like like for example, like Dave Chappelle, like somebody who's a comedian that people like, or it comes off as a black man who doesn't realize that they're silly and dumb, just like in the slavery days where people took advantage of slaves that did not have that much intelligence, or sometimes he does like really dumb things, like when he was in the Royal Rumble and he pulled out a ladder. So it's also kind of almost like the black man that's so dumb that everybody kind of is laughing at them is laughing at them and not with them, and that kind of exists in a lot of different cases where sometimes, like in a lot of older movies, the black character was always shown to be the dumbest character, or sometimes if you live in a mostly white area, and I grew up with this, that sometimes if you have a person of color kid, sometimes if that kid has like mental health issues, people will be laughing and treating that kid like he's stupid. Like it's just like, oh well, it's two ways for you stand out in two ways, that you're black and then you also have mental health issues. So you're just there to be laughed at a little extra, really. So there's definitely he definitely, in my opinion, is a character that has a lot of racial stereotypes. So I also kind of just wonder, what people think about that. And I know it's a little hypocritical because if you look at modern wrestling, there are a bunch of wrestlers that are stereotypes. For example, if you look at the acclaimed, Max Caster was being a little predatory towards MJF, and that comes down to two stereotypes. That comes down to a gay stereotype, that gay people or people who are into gay culture are sexual predators, and then there's also that stereotype of gay black men are sexual predators because of the stereotype of because it comes from that stereotype of when black men go to prison, they want to just have anal sex, they want to rape people, so it's they're pro LGBTQ, the acclaim, but then you have Max Caster being like a sexual predator, and then you also look at Max Caster being a rapper that actually is a black stereotype. But the big difference is that when you look at the acclaimed and their journey, winning the tag team titles, they actually broke this. They actually are more complicated than R-Truth. You see people who want to win the tag team titles because that actually shows that LGBTQ people can be champions, and also people of color can be champions in a professional wrestling company. Because, like as I said, in a lot of different places, that's a double negative. The other good example is Keith Lee. He is the black stereotype. He's a big fat black man. Black people have there's a stereotype that black people have very poor diets, but he comes off as very, very articulate, really. So, and somebody who he speaks very good English. He doesn't like come off speaking slang and whatever, really. So, you know, you can't kind of look at Keith Lee as a stereotype, in my opinion, because he has like a lot of different dimensions. There's Swerve Strickland. He talks about being the first black champion. He puts on great matches, really. But also there's that thing too about he comes down with Nana, and like Nana is a black guy dancing, and we all know that stereotype that blacks love to shuck and jive, but because they both have a goal to make Swerve the first black AEW champion, and he's working hard towards that, people resonate, and that's why people want to see him become champion, because there's really not a lot of people of color going after the AEW title. Um, I would also kind of would say another great example is Dalton Castle. I'm going to go to WWE in a minute. That one thing that people like about him is that he's underrated, but technically he is a stereotype because even though like you see like the boys and and it's very flashy fashion. That kind of is a stereotype. I mean, I know he's not gay, but it is a stereotype of a gay man. You know, just a feminine. He speaks in a very feminine, Mr. Slave type of way. Really, he has the boys. And then he actually doesn't win matches because of bad booking, but it also is a stereotype that gay people can easily get beaten up or whatever, really. So he definitely is a character of a gay stereotype. But I think what people like about him, at least, is that he's not losing because of he's losing because of Tony Khan's bad booking. He's not losing because he wants to be the gay guy losing every single thing to perpetuate the stereotype that gay people are sissies and can't win. You look at you look at stereotypes in WWE. For example, Roman Reigns and the whole like head of the table and anybody in that Samoan and in his faction that is Samoan. There are stereotypes about Samoan people being violent gang members and being these big hulky aggressive people. But one thing we like about Roman Reigns is I think that he's a good storyteller. There's definitely something about family drama, really. And then also too, he learned to change his gimmick and stand up for himself. So that breaks some stereotypes. He's not going along with what Vince originally planned, really. So we respect him because even though he is a bit of a stereotype, he breaks stereotypes by like standing up for himself. But I also will kind of also say that that he's the only one I can kind of think of. But there's definitely other examples as well of people of wrestlers in WWE concurrently who are a little bit of stereotypes and break it. But I think with R-Truth, he's like a pure stereotype. But then I also kind of say too, I'm a fan of Mark Henry, Mr. Sexual Chocolate, and I kind of like his old Sexual Chocolate stuff, but he came off as a sexually predatory and also licentious black man, and also a black man that never got the WWE title when he should have, because there's that stereotype. Because of that stereotype of blacks can't, if blacks have potential, they don't go as far as the white people, not as much potential, So there's definitely a clear example of other wrestlers who were stereotypes, who are not stereotypes. But I do think with like R-Truth, I just think that maybe I just don't like him because he's pure stereotypes. There's really nothing. He doesn't really have any other goals but other just to exist for a paycheck. Maybe if there was something like he wanted to be WWE champion and he took himself seriously, and there was a movement to do that, I think then that would be kind of good. A great example is the New Day. They went from a bunch of dancing, black people in comedy and a minstrel act to Kofi Kingston become the first WWE African WWE champion, and like somebody from Africa like winning someone from Ghana, Africa, someone from the continent of Africa, and very dark skinned like champion, WWE champion. He was the first one to do that. So, I do think that maybe if he did that with R-Truth, that would be kind of good, really. But I do think that, he does really come off as like as a bunch of stereotypes. And sometimes, as people say, like you just have to do what's easiest for you, really. So I don't, it's always a controversial question, but he's not someone that I like. And I really think that if I kind of psychoanalyze it, that, when I used to live in mostly white, when I grew up, I lived in mostly white neighborhoods, and I hanged out with just mostly white people growing up. So I remember growing up in Guilford, Connecticut, and people wanted me to rap and dance, or thought that I was good at basketball. I also remember going to college where I've had professors call me a nigger or use the word nigger around me. I've had a bunch of people use the word nigger around me, and I was a very nice, easygoing guy. I also remember in high school, Dave Chappelle was really popular, and some people called me light-skinned Dave Chappelle, and I would also kind of go along and kind of emulate skits from the Chappelle Show. And then I also remember, as I talked about with the 48-hour film project, where people were saying things, it's like, it's great that a black man is doing the 48, and people would talk about my race a lot, or think that I'm dumb and naive, really. So I experienced both, like, racism and ableism, and as I've said, each time I've kind of opened up to it with Mark Rupert, the president of the competition, doesn't respond. So it is kind of concerning. So maybe I think that when I was kind of just because I'm multiracial. I'm part black, but not 100% black. But I was always kind of like the black kid, or kind of like the kid that people associate with stereotypes. And I also kind of think that maybe that's one of the reasons why I think it hurts to look at a wrestler like R-Truth, because he kind of like fits into that group really. But there's a thing too that I think that, honestly, if R-Truth is somebody that's like, what, that just works for me, just kind of being an outrageous, crazy character. If that works for him, then so be it, and that's what he has to do, because honestly, that's what's drawing him to make money and whatever. That's good, but I think if he wants to do something different, I would encourage him to do that really. But I do think that you know there's definitely maybe harm that he doesn't realize that he's doing by just being nothing but stereotypes. Maybe if they can kind of make his character a little bit more dimensional, it would be more tolerable, really. But I also think that the other thing too is that maybe it's not good to kind of criticize him, because there's other wrestlers in WWE and also in AEW and other promotions, or in Impact Wrestling. Like, you look at, like, I think Naomi, like how she didn't like her direction and she decided to be an independent person and actually go off on her own, and did everything she did in Impact Wrestling, just to show that she's not going to fall in line. She's going to, like, be herself and actually settle down and work hard and make Impact Wrestling work. There's other people breaking stereotypes, while you have R-Truth that is just a stereotype. So, or even, or a good example is Titus O'Neil. Even though he kind of is a stereotype in a way, he's a goofy black man. He's done a lot for charity, really, so he does kind of help break those stereotypes. But I do think that when you look at R-Truth, he is a complete stereotype. And I kind of maybe wish they could do something a little bit different with him, where he kind of recognizes that, or the question comes up, really. I don't think he should be canceled. I think that the best thing to do is say maybe he needs to have alternative goals. Maybe he can be a champion on Raw. Maybe he can be like the heavyweight champion on Raw, and really actually show what he can do, really. Maybe get a little out of his, maybe do something a little different with his character. Maybe that's the best thing for him. But I definitely just never liked him because he was kind of like a stereotype. And I also will say, sadly, my parents, like, when I was a kid, I was not allowed to watch professional wrestling. When I went to college, I watched professional wrestling in 2006. But I missed the whole Ron the Truth Killings gimmick. I always wanted to see what that was about, really. And I think that people were saying that he was the first African American NWA champion. So I think that maybe, my thing would be kind of like, I'll be very interested just see that, and maybe be like, what, man, what would happen if WWE brought back that, or made him the Ron the Truth Killings, and kind of like, had him kind of like use that, maybe that could be maybe that could be a move that could make a lot more money, or put him in a different light, really. So it's always interesting with R-Truth, really. But I'm definitely not a fan with him. He's too much of a stereotype, and kind of offensive to me. And I think that's a little like concerning. People kind of just don't open up these conversations, and maybe he should open up conversations in Stamford, Connecticut, and be like, maybe I could be a little bit more different than just that dancing, rapping, crazy black man stereotype that I've been doing so long in WWE.